Grenada steps up to make cash contributions to financially strapped regional airline Liat. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Tuesday, March 5th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. The Grenada government on Tuesday said it will be making a cash contribution to the cash-strapped regional airline Liat. The announcement comes less than a week after the regional shareholder governments urged Caribbean countries to contribute to the future of the island-hopping carrier. And Prime Minister Gaston Brown had said efforts were being made to encourage the Grenada government, along with the governments of St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia and Guyana, to become shareholders. At a press conference on Tuesday, Grenada's CARICOM Affairs Minister Oliver Joseph said the island will make a cash contribution to Liat this month, and then additional funds will be paid based on load factor. He said the government's decision is based on what was presented at the recent CARICOM intersessional meeting.
Contributing, you know, they have the CARICOM decision call on all member states, right, to make the contribution because it's a regional airline, right? Where regional governments are the shareholders. So all governments ask, and Grenada decided yesterday at the meeting that we must come forward and contribute. And we think that with our contribution and all the other member states contributing, Liat will be able to survive in the short term. And as I said, in the long term, we look at a plan where we can pay based on load. Cash contribution we're making this month has nothing to do with the load factor. We are making a contribution to ensure Liat operations. That's the first thing. Yeah, so going forward now, we say, we cannot just continue giving you money. We must have some basis. So if you're saying that you have to reduce on flights coming to Grenada because it's not profitable, so for I'll give you an example. So if from Trinidad to Grenada will cost Liat 25,000 break even to come, and on the flight, that particular route, they're going to lose 10,000, then the government is prepared to pay the difference to ensure that Liat keep coming and don't lose money. That is going forward. But as for the contribution this month, it's just a one-off, it's a lump sum contribution to help Liat continue staying in the air.
The major shareholders of Liat are Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica and Antigua and Barbuda. Joseph says even though Caribbean countries will help with the restructuring of the airline, there will be no political interference in its operations.
So that was the decision that was taken to restructure the way Liat operate, because if you've been operating since 1974 and every year you have to come to government for money, you have to look at the way that you operate. So that decision, based on that decision, the cabinet has decided, let us put money, but monitor the way that Liat operate from here going forward. And the restructured plan will be submitted to heads so that they are all satisfied in the restructuring. What we're saying, there should be no political interference. So have a board of directors of businessmen that will make business decisions. We think part of the problem in the past may have been that you have government ministers and the board. We do not want politicians because politicians think to make political decisions. Let us have a board of businessmen who are accustomed operating and running business, run Liat, and report to the heads of government on a yearly basis.
Guyana's opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo says he's willing to agree to extend the elections date past the March 19th constitutional deadline, but only on his terms. Jagdeo had been insisting the polls be held later this month, in keeping with the 90-day deadline prescribed by the Guyana Constitution, following the opposition-led no-confidence motion against the government, which passed in the National Assembly on December 21st last year. But he has now made some proposals that he says will ensure the opposition's support for an extension. So what exactly does Jagdeo want? We get the details in this Newsroom Guyana report.
The opposition leader has informed President David Granger that the parliamentary opposition is prepared to lend its support for the two-thirds majority required by the Constitution to extend the deadline for general and regional elections beyond March 21st, 2019, but only if the government agrees to several of its proposals. Barry Jagdeo Monday officially responded to the president's invitation to meet on Wednesday, March 6, to discuss preparations for the elections, which was triggered 1 year early with the passage of the no-confidence motion on December 21st against the coalition government in the National Assembly. The opposition leader made it clear that he will only attend the March 6th meeting if the head of state agrees to place the following issues on the agenda for discussion: the date of the general and regional elections to be held before the expiration of the present voters list on April 30th, 2019, no new contracts to be awarded by the state, including regional democratic councils and state-owned corporations after March 21st, 2019, no new agreements, loans, grants, land leases, or any other such agreements or contracts after March 21st, 2019 that bind government, no abuse of state resources for partisan activities purposes, access to the state-owned media by all the contesting political parties. In his response, the opposition leader was explicit that the parliamentary opposition will only lend its support to extend the March 21st deadline if the government agrees to the proposals set out above. According to Jagdeo, his proposal to hold general and regional elections before April 30th, 2019 is reasonable and feasible with a claims and objections period, provided that GCOM acts in good faith and in conformity with its mandate and the Constitution. According to Jagdeo, if his proposals find favor with the president, he shall be prepared to meet him on March 6, 2019 at 11 a.m. or any other time. Jagdeo had initially stated that he will not support any extension to the election date. Article 106(7) of the Constitution dictates that the government shall hold an election within 3 months after the passage of a no-confidence motion, and that an extension can only be made by a favorable vote of 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly.
Over in Jamaica, the by-election to find a replacement for murdered East Portland MP Dr. Linville Bloomfield will be 10 days later than originally expected. Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced in a statement on Monday evening that after further consideration and consultation, the by-election date will be April 4th instead of March 25th. Nomination day will now be March 15th instead of this Friday, as Holness announced last weekend. According to the statement, the adjustment takes into account the Ash Wednesday public holiday, which falls on March 7th and which is an excluded day for the purpose of Section 21A of the Representation of the People Act, which states that the day appointed for nomination day must be at least 5 days clear after the announcement of an election. But the opposition People's National Party, PNP, has criticized the Prime Minister for having to change the date. Party leader Dr. Peter Phillips called on Holness to provide a proper explanation as to how an election date could have been announced before a thorough check for compliance with provisions of the Representation of the People's Act. Well, staying in Jamaica, the Prime Minister is proposing new powers for the security forces as his government intensifies its efforts to fight crime. A release from his office on Monday indicated that he has proposed a new legislative framework giving intermediate and specific powers to the security forces under the Enhanced Security Measures Law. TVJ's Dashan Hendricks reports.
Now, to get in the support for a state of public emergency from the opposition, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is seeking to get a new law passed to fight crime. According to the release, agreement was reached on Friday at the National Security Council meeting on what is now being called the Enhanced Security Measures Law. The OPM says the law is designed to empower the security forces with the tools deemed necessary to disrupt criminal networks, reduce violence, and increase public order. Without going into details, the release said the agreement was reached on the following. 1. The conditions that must exist to trigger and sustain the measures. 2. The system of accountability and judicial recourse to protect the rights of citizens. 3. Specific powers provided such as search and detention. And 4. Persons designated with responsibility for use of such powers. It says the government considers the legislation to be important and is moving towards its completion, though no timeline was given. Despite the impending new law, the Office of the Prime Minister emphasized that the use of states of emergency is still a viable option to be implemented for the safety and protection of citizens. Additionally, the Council reviewed the progress that has been made with other legislation which will contribute to the improvements in national security, including amendments to the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act, amendments to the Firearms Act, amendments to the Proceeds of Crime Act, and amendments to the Bail Act. The Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA, also made a presentation at the meeting saying it wants to examine measures to improve border security and reduce Jamaica's vulnerability to transnational crime. This included a review of current operations, security arrangements, and capacity gaps, and concluded with recommendations to further build the capacity of PICA and enhance the security of the country's ports.
And the government of Barbados is developing a 3-year plan to tackle rampant crime. Attorney General Dale Marshall told Parliament the plan is currently being drafted by the government's Criminal Research and Planning Unit and will cover the period 2019 to 2022. He said he's hoping the strategy will be the golden thread to minimize criminal activity. Still to come in Caribbean Newsline, Guyana to implement a ban on single-use plastics by 2021. We'll be right back.
Down here, and you just hold them all together and cut it into neat, tiny little cubes. You don't want it too big. You want it into fine cubes. And same with the carrots, we're going to do it in really small cubes. The pepper as well, and the onion. And the lime, we're going to just squeeze that in. So I blended everything. This is the corelli, the onion, the carrots, and the pepper. You see how fine everything is? This is how we want it.
We continue in Guyana, which is following on the heels of other CARICOM countries and plans to ban single-use plastics. Minister of State Joseph Harmon says the ban should be in effect in another 2 years. He spoke about the issue as he addressed a World Wildlife Day Youth Forum on Monday and urged Guyanese to start reducing their use of plastics.
The work has already begun on sensitizing our population to the fact that in 2021 is the date that we have identified for a ban on single-use plastics. And so it is important that we get ourselves ready for that and minimize the use of single-use plastics.
Carnival lovers across the Caribbean are enjoying the last few hours of reveling before the curtains come down on the 2019 festivities. In Dominica on Tuesday, intermittent showers did not dampen the spirits of band members as they paraded through the streets of Roseau. Spectators were treated to a colorful mix of traditional masks and the more modern costumes made up of mostly bikinis and feathers. The bands were out from 10 o'clock in the morning and are scheduled to continue until 10 p.m. Trinidad and Tobago and the French overseas territories of Martinique and Guadeloupe also celebrated Carnival over the past 2 days. The 2 days of merrymaking come before Ash Wednesday, which marks the official start of Lent on the Christian calendar. Ahead in Newsline Sport, England in pursuit of 161 for a victory over the West Indies in the first T20 of their three-match series. We'll have the latest in the ongoing match after the break.
When you have a case like this, you obviously the defendants are going to be the doctors, the hospital, etc. What was the legal strategies you pursued to try and get success for this case?
Well, the first thing you have to do is establish what are the standards of care. Doctors can't just do what they want. There are standards, minimum standards of care that they're supposed to follow. And there's a rule of medicine called differential diagnosis. You have to rule out the worst first.
Don't jump up to this non-stop turn and twist.
What up? It's your boy French Montana.
It's me, Smokey Robinson.
It's your boy David Doe.
Hi, I'm Elme.
This is Butcher Banton, and I'll be performing live for the Shiloh Band in St. Kitts Music Festival.
Don't miss the 23rd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival, June 26th to June 30th, 2019, featuring Butcher Banton, Smokey Robinson, Popcorn, and Elme. Also, Davido, French Montana, Fimba, Edwin Yearwood and Crossfire, Coco T, Skinny Fabulous, Shal Marshall, Charlie Black, Farmer Nappy, Nadia Batson, Infamous, New Vibes Band, and many, many more. It will be epic. It will be mind-blowing. It will be jaw-dropping. It will be awesome. The St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other. For more information and to buy tickets, log on to www.stkittsmusicfestival.com.
So now you've seen so far, you've been walking around, you've been in my kitchen, you've been all around. What do you think about the sanitary standards of kitchens that you've seen so far?
These two young teams for high school students are doing very good. They're washing their hands, they're changing their cutting boards, they're sanitizing their workspaces. I'm very impressed.
Good, thank you. We can talk to you a little bit later as you go on, so you're coming on to the end. Now, there is a score for sanitation and safety as we go on here in this competition.
To sports now, a half-century by Nicholas Pooran brought the Windies up to a respectable total despite England's dominance with the ball in the first innings of the first T20 International of the three-match series. West Indies were sent in to bat at the Darren Sammy Cricket Stadium in St. Lucia after the toss, and Pooran's top score of 58 from 38 deliveries saw the Caribbean side finishing the innings on 160 for 8 in 20 overs. Pooran put on a 64-run partnership with Darren Bravo, who was dismissed on 27. The Windies' batting suffered, though, as Thomas Curran and Chris Jordan tore into the top order. Curran finished with figures of 4 for 36, while Jordan picked up 2 wickets for 16 runs. Here are the highlights of the Windies' innings.
David Willey got a little bit of swing early on. Rashid's down there, right on the boundary, and down it goes. Didn't matter though. Joe Root taking care of Shea Hope. Gale again, looking dangerous, and then finding Rashid. A little bit of pace in this pitch. Was that too high? No, it wasn't. Plunkett went for 44. Joe Denley was in the attack for 3 overs, 1 for 28. But Pooran played really well, brilliantly. Plenty of 4s, plenty of 6s. Got himself a half century. Watch this from Jordan. Carlos Brathwaite went without scoring. Excellent Rashid. Outrageous from Pooran. Look at that. What a wonderful shot. Get it across with the wind. Carry the wind just. Wicket for Denley. to the ground. Curran kept his nerve. Perfect Yorker to Puran. Inside edge, brings 4, useful. Ashley Nurse with a ramp. Last wicket off the last delivery. Leaving Windies on 160 for 8.
Well, England need 161 to win the match. Let's join the match now to see how far the visitors have reached in their reply.
And that's when he's just struggled from this end in particular. It's the perfect end for him with the way the wind is. Well, this was the start. He got England off to an absolute flyer in the first over. And then it just went on from there. Johnny Bairstow got a real head start, just with gifts really, whether it was outside the off stump or whether it was too straight. Looks like at the moment Billings is just happy, doing the right thing. He's just getting up the other end.
That's my point to you earlier about what he's learned from someone like MS Dhoni's pretty much how he would play. Just knock it around, take it right to the end of the innings sometimes. Just look as if you're in control, which clearly he does. Great if you're a young cricketer spending time in dressing rooms with some of those iconic players. Rate is 6.5, so there's no concern there at this stage.
And that's the beauty of T20 though. One good over, all of a sudden it can change. Pressure can just flip very quickly.
Hit powerfully, again finds the gap and finds the boundary.
This is outstanding from Joe Denley. Cottrell should have just worked out from the ball before. He's just looking to hang leg side. So anything length wide of that off stump, he was looking for that option. And he's just put it exactly where he wanted the ball. Then he can use the pace that Cottrell is putting on it. He's just got to watch the batsman really hard.
Definitely kept down. The other thing we've seen a little bit of today, we didn't see in the ODI, just a little variation in bounce. Reckon I've seen that today when I watch England bat, and we would have been talking off air and yesterday, how would England going to bat on this pitch, knowing what they know from the ODI? I think they've stayed leg side of the ball more. You look at some of the dismissals in that ODI, themselves one or two awkward positions getting across the crease.
England on a 128 for 4 as they are in pursuit of 161 to win the first T20 in the 3-match series. And finally, in horse racing, Barbadian jockey Rashid Hughes and his 14-1 long shot Celestial Storm rode to victory in the prestigious Sandy Lane Gold Cup last weekend. The filly crossed the line in an upset finish, beating favourite Infrared in a time of 1 minute 49.04 seconds to earn the title and a grand prize of 120,000 Barbados dollars.
Then there's Gandalf. Bernardines races fourth. Celestial Storm the Grey, the filly, is on the inside of him. Then there's Debonair David. Brave Stars all on the rails. Bodie Top is trying to find a way through traffic. Refire to the outside. Night Prowler has all to pass. The opening quarter, 25 flat. Half in 47 and 4. They head up the hill towards their departure point. And it's Infrared still the leader. Northern Star is second. Celestial Storm is third. Gandalf is the next one through, but the magic wand is out on him as they come to the quarter pole. And the leader on the inside is still
Infrared on. Then comes Celestial Storm running a big race to go second. And they're homeward bound in the Gold Cup. And Infrared is trying to make all the running. On the outside, here comes Celestial Storm with a grand run. It's Infrared and Celestial Storm. Infrared and Celestial Storm. Celestial Storm and Infrared. What a performance! Celestial Storm, the great Ghost grabs gold.
And that's the sport. We'll be right back. Again, the major developments of this day: the Grenada government commits to making regular cash contributions to cash-strapped regional airline Liat. And in sport, England in pursuit of 161 for victory over the West Indies in the first T20 of their three-match series. And that's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to CanadaNews.com. For more of our programming, log on to caribvision.tv and check out our YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow, but from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and have yourselves a good night.